This is the Bluebook Citation Module 2.1, which corresponds to Chapter 5, Short Forms, Cases, in your interactive citation workbook. Before we begin, let's review how to do a full citation of a case. First, you write the names of the opposing parties in italics, separated by a V and a period, also in italics. Then, turning the italics off, you write a comma, followed by the information about the reporter in which you can find the case. This includes the volume number, the name of the reporter, and the first page of the reporter on which the case appears. Then there's another comma and a more specific page citation to where the reader can find the relevant information that you're citing. Finally, in parentheses, you write the court that issued the opinion in the year of the decision. You end the citation with a period. For an example, let's use the case Janky v. Poop Deck, which is the first case that comes up when you type poop into the LexisNexis search bar. First comes the name of the two parties, Janky and Poop Deck, separated by a V and a period and written in italics. Next comes the reporter information. This case can be found in volume 537 of the third edition of the Federal Reporter, starting on page 1122. The information pertinent to my argument is located on page 1131, and the case was decided by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in 2008. A short form cite is just an abbreviated form of the full cite. You can only use a short form citation for a case once you have already cited that case in full somewhere in your memo. So the first time you cite a case, it must be a full cite. Subsequent citations can be in short form. There are three ways to make a short form cite. First, the longest version of a short cite requires you to first state the name of one of the parties in italics. Here, that would be Janky. You follow that with a comma, the volume number, 537, and the case reporter. Here, that would be F3D. You conclude with at and a pin cite to the page of the case on which the pertinent information can be found. Note that the short form cite leaves out the page on which the case starts, the court name, and the year. Usually, you shorten the name of the case to the first party's name. However, when the first party's name is a geographical or governmental unit, you should choose the second party's name for your short cite. For example, if you were short citing United States v. Lopez, you would use Lopez as the short form, not United States. In some circumstances, mentioning the name of either party by itself might cause ambiguity or confusion. For example, if the case was United States v. Smith, you would not want to refer to it in the short cite as United States. But if another case in the same memo also has a party named Smith, you may not want to refer to it as Smith either. In those situations, it is best to state both of the party names just like you do in a full citation, giving you United States v. Smith. Also, if the first party's name is long and unwieldy, you can shorten it for convenience only if it will remain unambiguous to your reader what case you're referring to. For instance, if your case is H.E. Butt Grocery Company v. Bruner, your short cite version of the party's name could simply be H.E. Butt. The second version of the short cite leaves out all party names. You could use this type of citation when you refer to the name of the case in the text of the sentence itself. For example, if the sentence was, "In Janky, the court lauded the plaintiff for his convivial salutation, howdy ho," I could leave the name Janky out of the short cite that immediately follows the sentence. The third and final version of the short form citation is just id. You only use id when you're citing to the same case that you cited to for the immediately preceding sentence. Id is just an italicized I, D, and period. You always italicize the period, and if id begins your citation sentence, you capitalize it. Now, let's pretend that we're writing a memo and we bring up the case Janky v. Poop Deck for the first time and provide a full cite. If we refer to it again, in the immediately following sentence, and we're referring to the same page number, you just put id. If you're referring to the same case, janky, but a different page of that case, you write id at and write the page number. You can even use id multiple times in a row, but only if there are no interceding citations to other cases. So if you're referencing the same case across 4 sentences, you can use id for each of the last 3 sentences. But when you start a new paragraph and want to cite to the same source as the one cited to in the last sentence of the preceding paragraph, Professor Borman prefers you to use the short form citation that mentions the party name, the volume, and the reporter. This version, if you'll remember, is the first version that we've covered. This fuller form is a courtesy to your reader. It saves the reader from having to hunt back to the previous paragraph or page to see what case you're referring to. Now, if there is an interceding citation, you should use an alternate form of citation, which would be one of the first 2 that we went over. If janky is not referenced by name in the sentence that you're citing, then you should include it in the citation. If janky is referenced by name in that sentence, then you can leave the name of the case out and just have the reporter and pin site information. Now, it isn't limited to just citing cases. You can also use it when citing to other sources like statutes, constitutions, or legislative materials. But once again, only once you've done a full cite of that case, and only if your new citation is a sentence immediately following either a full citation or a short citation. The use of short-form citations can get sticky when dealing with string cites or parallel citations. You use string cites when you have more than one authority to support a proposition in a sentence. Sentence 2 is an example of a string cite. If the immediately preceding citation is a string cite, then you may not use id, even if one of those authorities is the case that you currently wish to cite. Suppose, for example, the sentence 1 relies only on janky, but sentence 2 relies on both janky and he but. Because the immediately preceding sentence, sentence 1, is not a string cite, you can use id to refer to janky. However, if sentence 3 refers to janky, you cannot use id, even though the immediately preceding sentence, sentence 2, cited janky, because the immediately preceding sentence was a string cite. This rule makes sense because if you only used id in your citation for sentence 3, the reader would think that you were citing both of the authorities listed in sentence 2's string cite. If the full citation of your case is a parallel citation with 2 or more reporter references, then use a normal short-form citation for all reporters that includes the volume number, reporter, and pin site. For the use of id with parallel citation, you would include the volume and reporter information of all reporters but the official state reporter, which appears first in your citation. For instance, if I had just referenced Roach in the immediately preceding citation, in the present citation I would leave out 167 NJ, because New Jersey Reports is the official state reporter. I would leave in the volume number and reporter name for the regional reporter, the Atlantic Reporter, which gives us 772A2D. For further guidance on short-form citations, consult B4.2 in the Bluebook on page 13, Rule 4 on page 72, and Rule 10.9 on page 107. The image at the bottom of the screen is taken from Rule 10.9. Chapter 5 of your interactive citation workbook also gives you an extensive walkthrough of short-form citations for cases. To sum everything up, let's do a sample problem. Suppose that in your memo, you want to cite to a case for the first time where the plaintiff is named Kirby, the defendant is Illinois, and the case was decided at the U.S. Supreme Court in 1972. The case can be found on page 682 of the 406th volume of the United States Reporter. You want to cite to page 685 of this decision. What would be the full citation for this case? Oh, by the way, I'm being quiet right now so you can do it if you want, or you can just skip ahead and cheat. Anyway, the full citation would be Kirby v. Illinois in italics, followed by the volume number 406, the reporter, U.S., in the beginning page 682. Then you have page 685 as your pin site, and 1972 as the year. Now, what if later on in the memo, after many intervening cites to other cases, you want to cite to the case again, only this time you want to cite to page 687. In this situation, you would write Kirby, the name of the first party, followed by a non-italicized comma, the volume and reporter, and at 687, which would be the pin site. Now, for that one, I forgot to give you time to solve it, so I'll just have to give you double the amount of time for the next question. Now, imagine it's the same scenario. What if you had mentioned the name of the case within the body of the sentence for which you're providing the citation for? I'm not sure if I said that right. In that situation, you would do the same short cite as for the last question, but just leaving the name Kirby out. Now, finally, what if, after the very next sentence, you want to cite to Kirby again, only this time to page 693 of that case? Then you would write id at 693. And that's it for short cites. Yay! The next installment of Module 2 talks about prior and subsequent case history.